Faith is not the belief that things will be easy. It is not the certainty that the difficulty will not come, or that when it comes, it will be brief. Faith, in its most essential form, is something quieter and more stubborn than that. It is the belief, held against the evidence sometimes, and held anyway, that underneath everything, underneath the fear and the uncertainty and the specific darkness of the specific moment, there is something that does not change, something that holds, something that was there before the darkness arrived and will be there when it lifts. That belief, quiet, persistent, not always comfortable to carry, is what gets people through the years that would otherwise be unendurable. Audrey Hepburn was 5 years old when the Second World War began, and 10 years old when the Nazi occupation of the Netherlands arrived in the town where she was living. The years that followed, 5 years of occupation, were among the most formative of her life, and among the most difficult that any child could be asked to navigate. Food became scarce, then scarcer. Tulip bulbs and grass were eventually among what people ate to survive. She watched people she knew disappear. She learned what fear felt like, not as an abstract emotion, but as the specific physical reality of a child moving through streets where safety was not guaranteed. She survived. She emerged from those years at 15, thin and marked by what she had lived, but with something in her that the years had not touched. She talked about this in interviews across her adult life, carefully, because the wartime years were not something she revisited without cost. But when she did speak about them, the thing she returned to most consistently was not the suffering, though the suffering was real. It was what had persisted through the suffering. Her mother had been a woman of faith, not demonstrative about it, not institutional in the formal sense, but genuinely and quietly believing. And that belief, witnessed daily in a woman navigating genuine danger with a quality of steadiness that the child Audrey found incomprehensible and extraordinary, was one of the things Audrey carried out of those years. The model of it. The evidence that it was possible. The specific demonstration that a person could face what her mother was facing and remain underneath it, unbroken. She could not always articulate what her own faith was exactly. She did not fit neatly into any single religious category, and she said so. What she could articulate was the quality of it. The belief that love was, in the end, more powerful than what she had witnessed. Not that love prevented the darkness, the occupation, had made absolutely clear that it did not. But that love survived the darkness. That it persisted in specific people and specific relationships and specific acts of ordinary human courage through the years when the darkness was most complete. And that persistence, that stubborn survival of genuine love through genuinely terrible circumstances, was itself a form of evidence. Evidence that the love was real, that it was stronger than what had tried to extinguish it. And that belief in the endurance of love was her faith. She carried it into her adult life and let it shape the direction of her later years. When she left the film career that had made her one of the most recognized people on earth, she turned her attention toward UNICEF, toward children in the most vulnerable circumstances in the world, in the countries where the specific darkness she had survived as a child was still present in its modern forms. She visited those countries. She sat with the children there. She brought to that work the specific quality of a person who understood what she was looking at, not from distance, but from experience. And what she gave to those children, the quality of her attention, the specific way she looked at them, as if their existence was both precious and urgent, came directly from what she had carried out of the occupation. The faith that love was stronger, the conviction that the specific child in the specific terrible circumstance was still worth the full weight of care and attention that any child deserved. She gave that, consistently, until she no longer could. Maybe you've been through something that tested whatever faith you had. Not the occupation of a country, the specific historical form that darkness took for her, but some equivalent. Some years that required more than the ordinary resources, that asked you to hold on to something, a belief, a hope, a trust in something larger than the difficulty, when the circumstances made the holding very hard. And maybe you are still holding. Or maybe the holding has been hard enough, for long enough, that what you are carrying now is not quite what it was. A little thinner, a little more uncertain about whether the underlying thing is still there. It is still there. Not because difficulty always resolves. It does not always resolve. Not because the darkness always lifts on schedule. It does not. But because the love that has been given to you, and the love you have given, and the specific evidence you have accumulated in the relationships that have held, in the kindnesses that were extended, in the ordinary human courage that has shown up in your life in specific people at specific moments, is real. It has been there. It persists. And it is itself a form of evidence for the thing you have been trying to hold on to. The evidence of love's endurance through the difficult. That evidence is yours. It is in your own story. And it is enough to build a faith on. Audrey Hepburn built hers on exactly that. Not on theology, though she had reverence for spiritual things. On evidence. On the specific, witnessed, lived proof that love persisted through the occupation. That her mother had remained steady. That specific people had made specific choices to care for others at personal cost. That the love was real even when everything else was not. And from that evidence, she built something that carried her through a very long and very full life. Through the career and the family and the later work and the years of great joy and the years of difficulty. The same faith, quietly held, never without question, but never entirely relinquished either. Always there in the background, like a light that dimmed sometimes, but did not go out. That is what faith at its most genuine looks like. Not the triumphant, never-doubting version, the one that dims sometimes, the one that is held through effort rather than effortlessly, the one that keeps coming back after the doubt and the difficulty to the underlying evidence. Love has been here. It has persisted. It will persist. And that is enough to keep going. What is your evidence? What specific, lived, personal proof do you have from your own story, from the people who have shown up, from the kindnesses that have arrived when you needed them, that love is more durable than the difficulty? That evidence is worth naming, worth holding, worth returning to in the moments when the faith is thinner than you would like. Audrey Hepburn returned to hers throughout her life, the memory of her mother's steadiness, the lived proof of ordinary human courage through extraordinary circumstances. She kept going back to it, and from it, she kept finding enough to continue. So take a slow breath and let yourself name, quietly, one piece of your evidence, one specific moment when love was more durable than what was trying to undo it, one person who held when holding was hard, one kindness that arrived when the circumstances seemed to argue against it. That moment is real. That evidence is yours. And it is pointing, as Audrey Hepburn's evidence pointed, toward something that has always been more stubborn than the darkness, more enduring than the difficulty, more essentially what the world is made of than the hardest years have suggested. Love is there. It was always there. And it is still there now, in you and in the people around you, and in the world that keeps producing, even in the most difficult circumstances, the specific evidence that it has not been extinguished. That is the faith worth carrying. Audrey Hepburn carried it, and so can you. She spent her final years doing the work that her faith required of her, sitting with children in Somalia, in Ethiopia, in Bangladesh, in the places where the suffering was most acute and the need for someone to come was most pressing. She did not romanticize those visits. She was clear-eyed about what she saw and what it meant. But she kept going. Even when the work was physically demanding in ways that her health, in those final years, made difficult. She kept going because the faith required it. Because the love she believed in was not a passive thing, not a feeling held quietly inside while the world produced its difficulties outside. It was an active thing, a choosing, again and again, to put yourself in the specific place where the love was most needed, to make your presence itself a form of evidence, to say, with the fact of being there, you are not forgotten. You are worth the coming. That was her faith in action, not the statement of it, the living of it. That is the most important form that faith can take when it becomes not a belief held in isolation, but a way of moving through the world. When what you believe shapes what you do. When the trust you carry in love's endurance actually generates love in the specific places where love is needed. When your presence in someone else's difficulty is itself the evidence you are trying to hold on to. She was the evidence for the children she visited, the living proof that someone had not forgotten, that love was more stubborn than the circumstances, that it could travel, even to the hardest places, and be genuinely present. That is not a small thing. That is the whole of what faith, when it is working, produces in the world. Your faith, whatever form it takes, is also producing something. In the people you show up for, in the specific ways you extend yourself toward others when the circumstances don't require it, in the ordinary kindnesses that you give without keeping track of what they cost, in the presence you bring to people who need someone to be present. These are the living form of whatever it is you believe, and they are building something in the people who receive them, and in you, and in the world that they move through. Audrey Hepburn's faith built something extraordinary in the lives of children she will never fully know she affected. Your faith is building something too. In the ordinary, daily, unhurried practice of love that looks like showing up. Keep showing up. The faith is in the showing up. It always was.